order. So the first action item is to approve the order of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is passed. Next one is the minutes of the November 19th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that is passed, and we got Sunny all ready to go, standing up there with the staff
Ready.
report.
I'm prepared. Staff updates and staff development activities. We wanted to thank the Friends for generously sponsoring our annual holiday brunch. It's always enjoyable, and we really appreciate it. And then we will be hiring a new LA2 for Maine. So that position should be posted here shortly. Programming, things that are coming up. Under children's, I noticed that I had written December 27th. That is incorrect. It is December 30th for the Lego Mania Design Contest. That starts at 2 p.m. and pre-registration is required for that event. It's a pretty big event. So we want to make sure everyone gets in who wants to. And then on the 31st at 11 a.m., we are going to start our Frozen New Year's Eve party. So come build a snowman with us. It'll be great. Coming up in teens, on the 19th at 4 p.m., we are going to have our origami crane mobile craft. That's at Northport. And then on the 27th at the Dr. James Carlson Library, we actually have 3 separate escape rooms planned throughout that day. There's going to be one at 12, one at 1, and one at 2. And you will need to register for that if you are interested in it. Upcoming things for adults. Last night, this is the last night for our mental wellness education series, Battling the Winter Blues. That's going to be tonight at 6:30. Upcoming on the 4th of January at the Dr. James Carlson Library at 10 a.m., we're going to be doing our fall tea tasting series, and then we will be doing some ripple crochet. We have 2 different sessions planned for that, one on January 9th and one on the 11th. Then just kind of coming up in general, the winter reading program, the winter readathon, those dates are set. It is going to be January 6th through March 1st. So get your bookmarks ready for that. And then we also are announcing the start of our fourth run of Northern Narratives. That portal is now open and accepting submissions for local authors in North Dakota and the Lake Advocacy Regional Library System. And then Children's just want me to let you know that they do a fun Head Start program. They visit once a month, September through May, and they try to get to each of the Fargo locations during the year at least 2 times. They visit the classrooms, they do a story, they do like a little craft, songs and activities, and those are for kids ages 3 to 5, so they just wanted to let you know in case that was a service that you weren't aware of.
Wow. What's the winter readathon?
So it's like the summer reading program, but a little toned down. We just have a bunch of winter-themed crafts, activities, and it's, again, we have kind of another reading, a readathon kind of
challenge.
Thing. Yeah, a reading
In other words,
challenge.
folks
then.
read
Yeah.
a number of books and then they're eligible
Yes.
for prizes.
But
So-
there's no impressive video that is put on by all. Shoot.
You know, we can only do one great video a year.
Aw. Okay, okay.
Is it for kids and adults?
Yep, kids, teens, adults, everyone.
Cool.
What is ripple crochet?
Whew.
Are you a fan of throwback throws?
Crochet.
Yes, Lori.
Crochet under the influence? Or is that
Under the
It's
Afghans by your grandma.
ripple. Talking about wine.
cheap?
Chevrolet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because you are wearing a knit item. I have learned the difference between that's knit, which
Is-
is different from crochet.
All right, I learned something new today.
Okay. So you're not teaching the class.
No.
No. Okay. So okay. What other questions can we quiz Sunny about? He's doing well so far.
Whoever wrote the little blurb about the Frozen New Year's Eve party did a very nice job.
Probably, yeah, Lauren. She's very clever with all of her little blurbs.
Well,
That's why we don't have a video. She spends all of her
she's
energy
like
writing
doing-
very clever
ah,
blurbs for all of our
we need
programs.
to duplicate her or something.
Yeah.
So
4 more Laurens.
yes. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Sunny. Unless there's any other questions for Sunny. No. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have staff report. Now let's move on to the director's report.
Yes, per your packet, you can see the report there. We had, and I want to bring up a couple things. We had an admin team mini retreat back on the 4th. Having on one of our, coming out, number of years working on our current strategic plan, kind of trying to pull back and have discussions regards to priorities and core services. That was kind of our first discussion. We got a ways to go on that. We'll have further discussions in that regard. You can see other quarterly project meetings with other members of the admin team. Attended a Friends Board meeting. Chamber After Hours was the big Christmas one. Shook a lot of hands. Did some work with the North Dakota Library Coordinating Council in terms of grants to libraries out in the state. Also met with the facilities manager to kind of lay the groundwork for the project for the new or upgrade of the lighting of the Maine and Carlson libraries that will get started after the first of the year. So a number of things going on.
Okay. And that's the one, the lighting project is going to save us.
Correct.
Yes, money in the long run. Okay. Okay. Do folks have questions for Tim on the director's report? What is so North Dakota Library Coordinating Council?
Right. What that is a group of there's different types of libraries in the state. And so they try through the state, working with the state librarian and the state library, to, over a course of a year, the state library gets a number, or a biennium rather, a 2-year period. The state allocates a certain amount of money for grants for libraries out in the state. And I represent public libraries on that body, and we work with the state librarian to develop types of grants and to approve grant applications. So that's the big thing, and looking also at kind of library visioning 2020 for the state library. So it's basically working with the state library to evaluate, develop specific kinds of grants and then moderate the submissions and approve and do that kind of thing. So it's been the most fascinating aspect of being on that particular council is, as a part of it, we go out and visit the wide variety of libraries out in the state of North Dakota. I mean, there's some very, very small, energetic little libraries that we visited, other mid-sized, and you get out in the communities and you meet the people and you see what's going on out in the state in terms of libraries. So it's been really rewarding. I'm going to be coming off the committee, the council, probably in June, because by state law you can only do like 6 years total. So
How often do you guys meet?
quarterly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And this is an additional meeting. There was some discussion about a particular grant, and so they had a Zoom meeting in regards to that. So.
Well, and I know we've talked about grants beforehand because we don't do as many grants through our
Correct.
library. Okay, so these meetings are not really generating ideas for grants for our libraries, but rather how the littler ones can be serviced? Or?
Right. One of the things, right, and I think in that previous conversation, I don't want to say the same things over and over again, but the need out there in the state is extraordinary. You have libraries that are essentially one person doing the entire thing. I mean, they literally have to fundraise for money for collection, for buying new stuff. And, it's really been rewarding to be able to develop, collection development grants and approve them and see the difference that it makes to those folks out there. So.
Any questions for Tim on the director's reports? No. Okay. Then we are moving on to an action item, which is carryover from last time. It is unfinished business of the computer use violation procedure.
Right, and I made this an action item. I wasn't sure what the wishes of the board, but I wanted to provide that opportunity if the board so decides. And so, again, what you have here is it posits, and again, how it's defined in terms of improper use is pulled directly from the computer use policy. Those individual bullet points, that's what they represent. Underneath there is really procedural in terms of letting folks know how to get it done, essentially, within the systems. I think the point of discussion, you see on the second page, computer use policy violation scale, and that one is primarily for adults. We have Lori West here, the branch services librarian, if questions in terms of the minors. Because again, as I mentioned last time, in Northport and in Carlson, it's a different dynamic, especially right next to the school. It's primary a younger group, which is normally a different set of challenges. I can say in terms of the computer use violation scale, where you see first offense, verbal warning, second offense, 6-month suspension. I have not, this is one of the things we really put together early when I got here, and I can hardly remember any, on one hand, how many, after 6 months, if somebody's come back and said, I'm gonna get back on, and then they have an additional violation. The 6 months seems to work in that regard. And the other part of it where it talks, so, and again, this is only related to computer use. This is not related to, oh, you can't come to the library for 6 months. This is, in terms of what you're doing on the computer, you need a break for 6 months. We gave you a verbal warning, we talked to you about it. And so, I guess if folks have questions, we'll open it up to questions, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on where this came from. And
Okay, if I'm reading our minutes correctly, we don't have a motion on this yet. Is that correct?
the request was just to see it.
Oh, okay.
Right, just to have it to be viewed by the board. What is this procedure?
This isn't
In
an
light of a
act-
discussion of the computer use policy, it wasn't, so it was stated as, the board would like to see this particular procedure. So there really isn't any action other than the request to be viewed by the board. So that's where the conversation is in terms of that.
Okay, well, let's chat about the computer use policy. So Laura, you will oversee the policy and, or can speak to,
Yeah.
Beth can. Laura can?
You want to go,
Both
you
of
want to go up to the microphone?
We got two mics. We just knew that both of you guys would be
Do
here
they
today.
both work?
Yeah.
All right.
It's a duet.
Yeah.
Not me.
I'll kick off with questions. The first one is just how do you guys feel that, you've seen this in practice now for however long we've had it. Do you guys think that it works pretty well, or what's your?
Rather, I would say, rather well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How many instances do you guys normally get of having to ban people? Or not ban people, I guess, but do the verbal warning and then to the second tier of the 6 months and then
Exercise the policy.
exercise
I would
the
say in
policy?
terms of the adult side, and so the violation, which tends to be content that slips through the filter, I don't know that we've run into instances with this in the last 3 to 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Good. What about
Technology does catch a lot of it. Yeah. The kids' behavior doesn't relate to the same nature of content.
Yeah, I would say for kids, you know, we have the instances, I don't know, every so often. A lot of times, I think with kids, it's more education, educating them. Like, these are the rules when you're at the library and using our computers. And so we let them know, and we really want them to use it. They sometimes don't listen, and so if we can end their session for the day, that sometimes is all it takes. That they, I do need to, be respectful when I'm in, or not, get too rowdy, or things like that. So generally speaking, it's worked as well for us. So.
Do you have to notify parents if they're?
I usually try to, yeah, yep. And sometimes I don't get through. We usually at least give them my card. Sometimes parents will reach out and let me know. But yeah, I definitely talk to the parents if at all possible, so.
Other questions that folks have for you ladies? No, okay. Well, great. So it's not technically an action item. It was just kind of a revisiting from last. So I don't think we have to do a motion or anything on that. I'm looking to Betsy. Okay, so no action. Okay. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. Yep. Then we will move on to new business, which is the reference services overview. We'll start with that one.
Just when you think it's safe to sit down.
Get your steps in.
Okay. Yes, and as mentioned, I'm Beth Postma, Deputy Director, and have been part of the reference crew since 1989. And so giving a brief overview of what the reference department does, what reference librarians do in this day and age, and I think it comes down a lot to the core function of connection. We connect people to what they need to know, what they want to know, what they're interested in. We connect people with resources they maybe didn't know were out there. We connect people to services within the library, without the library, that will meet their needs. This can happen in many forms. A lot of it is in person, face-to-face. We also answer reference questions or work with folks over the phone and through email, and sometimes that's at a distance for people out of town doing local history research and going back in genealogy and checking up on the house that their grandparents lived in. The forms that this takes, ready reference, this used to be much greater earlier. Yeah, Wikipedia has wiped out some of this, but so we don't have near, I would say, the ready reference calls that happened at 8 o'clock at night with bar sound in the background that we did when I started.
Trivia.
Trivia, yep. But particularly for those not connected to the internet, we are still the connection point. So it's phone numbers, it's business addresses, it's hours of operation for things. If they don't have an out-of-state phone book for something, we're that resource. We connect people to history a lot. Local history is part of our function. Newspaper collections, newspaper on microfilm, local history resources in our North Dakota collection. And also, many times reference librarians will talk about, it's not that we know all the answers, but we know where the answer is. And many times it's with local history, it's who has the answer. So referrals within the community. We connect people to our electronic resources, and this is a lot of one-on-one coaching at point of need. So people who can't figure out our online catalog, or they knew online catalogs from other libraries and how is ours parallel or slightly different. How do they get at a magazine article if we don't carry the title, but we may have it electronically? How do they make sure that what they got and the result of their internet search is the right thing? We run into this a lot, and I would say I particularly deal with this when I'm at Carlson, is citizenship information and looking for naturalization forms. And if you do a Google search for a naturalization form, you're gonna come up with a commercial source where you can fill it in, but if you wanna send it or print it, they're gonna charge you 25 bucks. Instead of actually knowing what the website address is for Naturalization and Immigration Services itself and get to the authorized form that is available free without charge. It's those types of things. Job information is a lot of what we do, not just helping people find job boards, but also helping with, we do have resume software available, resume services, and a lot of what we do is teaching people how to attach a document to an email or to an online form. We connect our users with the rest of the library and its offerings. Like I mentioned, how do you search the catalog? What does the catalog mean? Where is this particular location? Parent-Teacher Resource Center is adult material, but it's in the children's room, so redirecting there. Particularly also connecting with our collection, where things are in the library, pointing with our feet to particular collections is what we term it. Readers advisory services. I like such and such an author. Who else do you suggest that I read? We do that in person, also through our May We Suggest service. We also do it a lot with our e-content. How do I find an ebook? How do I download an audiobook? I hit download, I can't find the book. How do I get it to play? We do a lot of troubleshooting, along with other staff, but we do a lot of the troubleshooting for the digital collections. A question was asked, what are the limitations of the reference service? We can lead the people to a resource and make sure it's perhaps the accurate site or form to the best of our ability, but we can't make decisions or take action for them. This, particularly in terms of legal reference information, we cannot act as an attorney. I can lead you to the section of the Century Code. I can't tell you exactly what it means for your case. I will not. Medical information. I just see the attorney on the board saying, oh, yes, exactly so. Medical information, the same thing. I can get you to the correct reference book or the page. I can get you to a reliable health information site on the web through the National Library of Medicine, and I can get you a health dictionary to work through this website, but I can't tell you what this means for you. When it comes to job information, we can demonstrate the resume software. We can show you where the resume collections are, but as I've been asked and had to say, no, I cannot write the resume for you or fill out the online job application for you. The other one is I'm very happy to tell you how to spell a word, but I can't proofread your document. Have been asked to do that as well. Often our general limitation is somewhere around 20 minutes. We'll work with you one-on-one for 20 minutes. We'll keep an eye on the desk, see what the other traffic is like. But one-on-one for 90 minutes, that's just really beyond the scope of what we can do. And hopefully, we can refer people onto other resources that might be available to give them more intense assistance. How do we do this? Question was about the education and training involved. The vast majority of our staff who work the information desks have a master's in library and information science. I was talking with one of my colleagues who completed her degree last year about how the courses have changed over the decades and what stays the same and what is different. The titles of the courses have definitely changed. I did not have the information landscape, but yes, it's an introduction to libraries and introduction to library and information science. Many of the core things are still the same. It might be called People in the Information Ecology, but it is also about user experience, community analysis. What is information-seeking behavior? How do people actually go about looking for what they need? Many of the core skills that are still taught the same, how the structure of information works, vetted journals, peer review, how the reference interview, how to properly conduct a reference interview so you have open-ended questions and start with general and then get down to the specific, and how do people sometimes ask what they really don't want to know and how you figure out actually what they are really needing to ask about, which is a long practice and you never quite get it right, I'll say that. And how to organize information, whether internally, whether large systems such as catalogs or bibliographic utilities like OCLC, but you know a lot, how do you arrange it so that people can get to it and make sense of it? One of the changes I would say that has happened over the decades, and particularly talking with Sarah Westall, my younger colleague, before it used to be a matter of memorization. You knew which database or reference work did what. You knew that modern languages bibliography was arranged by country of origin, and then century, and then author. So you had to figure out when Jonathan Swift wrote and that he was Irish and not English to actually find any commentary on his work. I would imagine it's the same for Spanish versus Portuguese for MLA Bib. So now it's much more emphasis on information literacy. So there's a lot of information out there. You can get a lot of search results, but is what you're looking at valid? Or what's the reputation? Or what's the slant of the website or the publishing resource? So always trying to maintain that for ourselves, but hopefully, and we don't do it to the extent that K through 12 or higher ed do, but also pass on to our customers, how do you evaluate what you're looking at? And to make sure it's reliable. Even with a degree in hand, there is always a lot of training and continuing education needed, because if you're a new hire in a new city, you've got to learn a lot of local information, local history, resources of that community, who the players are, and then also how that local library is structured. I think one of the things that's most helpful always for anybody in reference or information services is a mindset of constant curiosity. And in previous years, I've had mentors that modeled that wonderfully for me. I know we might be an annoyance to some of our colleagues, but reference librarians will really get jazzed by the odd factoid of the day and share the little piece of trivia. Yeah, okay. So, but you never know that what you know from other areas of your life will come in handy. I had a genealogy example last week where somebody was looking for an ancestor, and lucky or unlucky for her, she was researching in the Netherlands, and I could tell her, you're looking up the wrong spelling of that first name, because I can tell you it's not a Y, it's an IJ in Dutch spelling. And she found hits after that, so a new path for her. We bring who we are to the reference background in terms of areas of subject interest. Math questions go to my colleague Steve Hubbard. Auto repair and alt country or old country music go to music history, pop music history go to Greg Gilstrap. One of our newer colleagues has a background in special education, so we divvy things up. Megan, one of my other colleagues, crime history, it's kind of scary, but that is her thing. We are also connected to other parts of the library and its operations. Many of the library staff actually do some hours on the information desk. Lori does as well. Jason in technical services, Ben in technology, Jenna Lee in terms of branch staff. So a lot of people do a few hours a week to help cover all the bases. Our staff, our reference librarians, are active in programming, leading book clubs, instruction sessions, cultural events, and more. I think one of the other things is we connect people to information through partnerships, not just coming to the information desk, but out in the community. Greg Gilstrap is our point person for our Foundation Center database, that we are the site in Eastern North Dakota for access to grants information. And he does regular training for other nonprofit leaders and grant writers. I take part in a skills training program that provides basic financial literacy to people going through that training program up at Skills and Tech Center, often New Americans. Megan Richardson is part of the city's team to make sure that we have a complete count for the 2020 census, so she is part of that planning effort. New and evolving partnership is with Job Service. We've partnered with them in the past with some general basic computer skills class. They refer people to us for computer access all the time. We will be taking part in their jobs training program in 2020 as part of those who are receiving assistance having to go through an educational requirement, but part of that will be an hour session of how the library can assist them in their job search and in their lives in general. I think one of the other things that how we connect to the city, the community, which is a byproduct of our history of being for a while relocated with emergency services, is that one of the times where I think reference service is most vital is the springs we have floods. And the reference staff, many people don't know, staff the flood information phone line. So we take a lot of the general questions. The highly specific ones who live on the riverfront will vet. Those go on to the engineering staff, but we will take a lot of the general community. There are times we've run that 24/7. Several of the years we ran 6 a.m. to midnight, but it's when getting the right answer really matters. You have questions?
Thanks for the overview of that. We'll start out with that. Man, I have questions, but I don't want to always hog them. So I want to open up the floor to see if other folks have questions for Beth.
I'll ask a question.
Go for it.
So there's a lot of emerging technologies that come into the scene like every year. How does staff keep up with all the technology that people might ask based on the computers or come to you?
We have some who have an interest in it just as a hobbyist level and are constantly engaged in the new thing. We rely on our colleagues like Ben Deuber and people who are otherwise looking at and say, you know, this works for us, this applies to us. No, this is really not us. There's, you know, we rely on our family networks who say, what is this really? Does this apply? I'm sure you ask your son on some things. I will ask my son who's currently working for a tech, do I really need to know about blockchain? And he goes, yeah, it's gonna be something, but you don't have to know about it in a public library, you're fine. So it's making use of network. And some of the things, particularly when it is very much so related to our mission in terms of e-content, e-audio, you pretty well have to have the device in your hand and be working and using with it along with your customers. And the city, the library has supported where we have devices purchased, where reference staff check them out and then can actually learn on them, use them as a customer would.
Is that part of the, because I had a technology written down too. So is that part of, and you guys mentioned that you have to do continuing education on, so do they offer technology-based specifically trainings for folks? So it's not just on an ad hoc basis, like you checking with your son or
there is a lot coming out there. I mean, the question is time to consume, I would say. Because we do receive the professional journals, so we are aware of what other libraries are doing. Many of us are on listservs or regular Twitter feeds of either publishers or other library agencies who are engaging in things. Many of us do take part in online learning through webinars offered through either Public Library Association, American Library Association, Association for Library Services to Children, or a joint group called Web Junction, which not only offers them live and interactive, but also has recordings. And we make use of that content quite a bit.
Are your guys' hours pretty regular at the reference desk? So if the automotive specialist, for instance, is he, if like, let's say I come in on a Monday and I have a automotive question, but he sits there on Wednesdays. And so do you just say, can you come back on Wednesdays, or do you have him on speed dial? And you can, how does that?
For the folks who are predominantly reference, they are on desk anywhere 28 to 32 hours a week out of a 40-hour work week. So it's usually they're around. Weekends, if they're working the weekend, somebody might not be there Thursday, Friday. But all of us should have a basic understanding of, I can get you through the automotive thing, and I can recognize models and car years, and I have learned some things that a solenoid deals with a starter. But there's a long story behind that. But anyway, so we all have a start. I mean, if somebody needs something more advanced, but we all know enough of all the resources we offer, particularly electronically, to get somebody started. And usually it's like, oh, okay, this has what I need. I see where to go from here.
I would say as an organization that my hats are off really to the reference and all frontline folks, because again, our greatest challenge is not only, maximizing our efforts and our customer service on a day-to-day, but also, staying ahead of the curve of how things are changing technologically in society and what have you. Now, I would say that with that is the tyranny of the everyday is a real challenge. When you only have X amount of staff hours to cover the hours that were open, 3 locations, 2 desks, 2 people upstairs at Main, nights, weekends, daytime, mornings, 3 shifts. I mean, it's a real challenge. And so it's extraordinary, I think, what this organization is able to accomplish with the folks we have, given starting out, you already have 186 hours a week of coverage, of service, across in various, service points throughout 3 locations. So yeah, technology is always going to change, and we have that challenge, and the challenge of, identifying, training, and I think people are attuned to that. And I think, I think it's extraordinary what they're able to do, given that right out of the chute, you got 186 hours to cover. And then if it's upstairs, then you double that because you need 2 folks. We just do. It's an urban library. It's a large space up there. There's, we don't want lone worker issues. So, yeah, my hats are off to the folks that do that.
And piggybacking off of Tim's, and talking about resources and constraints and all that kind of stuff, and also just the vast amount of information sounds like you guys need to know, and then also be trained on, and then all that. Do you guys? And then you also mentioned about that you got to kind of cut it off at 20 minutes, and you got to move on.
Often.
So, do you feel like, is there anything that could improve the reference? Are there areas where you feel like you guys can grow, and ways that we could help you in any way, or I don't know, is there ways to be doing it better?
I think that's always a continuing conversation. I would say it was part of the admin team retreat of earlier in December. We're always talking about how we can do this better, and the easy answer is always staff, but that's not always the answer. It's appropriate staff, and it's directing staff, and making use of the resources we have. There are things certainly that we would like to be able to do, that we might have to, take small steps toward or do beta projects toward, rather than, big, massive service launches. Some of the either drop-in technology assistance or technology classes are something that between the reference staff, the technology staff, and programming, we've gone back and forth on, because in some ways it's easier for a reference librarian to say it once to a mass of people, but that's actually not effective learning, because people learn at point of need and when they actually need to know something, and then it's often one-on-one coaching. So if we're talking about outcomes, the one-on-one often is the most effective, although it may seem repetitive to staff. And getting people at a finite time in a finite place often doesn't work with people's contemporary lives. So, we yo-yo back and forth on what direction.
Yeah, technology it has this incredible point of need situation that is the challenge. A couple of years ago, I don't know if we quite have this as we did then. Certainly, the first couple weeks after Christmas, someone's bringing in the present that they got, that they have not a clue what to do with it, how to turn it on, how it benefits them. And I often say this, is that, and along with that, if you watch at least 50 minutes of television, what you're told repeatedly is this technology is easy and it's going to solve all these problems and it's going to do all this stuff for you. Repeatedly. Every commercial, every 30 seconds, you're getting this. Where the reality of it is, it's a whole spectrum of folks coming in and their understanding of what this device is, what it actually can do, what they really want to do with it, and how those things marry up or don't marry up. And that's a continual challenge.
Okay. But in general, you guys feel like you're meeting the needs of the public. Like the questions are being answered. 20 minutes seems to capture most of the, certainly there's going to be
people who would push us for more, but they understand when we're dealing with customers.
And you're not going to know every topic on everything ever, but in general, you feel like you guys are covering the need from.
I would think. I think our customer service responses when we get them say that, so.
Again, where I am on the staff end is trying to, get additional full-time reference associates to bolster the amount of staff available for that level of coverage. Because, and as Beth mentioned, there's a wide variety of staff that have primary responsibilities related to technology, collection development, deputy director, branch services manager. That's a full plate in and of itself. And, as the community grows, as the impetus for us to do more things grows, as, the need grows, as you mentioned, my goal is to build the capacity at this service levels that my deputy director can focus on being a deputy director. My branch services manager can work on branch services. My tech person, all those people can focus on their primary responsibilities. Because those responsibilities are waiting for them one way or the other. And you can tell, and Beth did a wonderful job describing, that job in and of itself is huge to the mission of who we are, what we do, and how we meet the needs of the community. What we've always run into, the eternal question for us is this and that's good, it's a good challenge, but I just bring this up as, this is what we're focusing on based on these discussions, so.
Okay, more questions from individuals. Go ahead, Whitney.
How have other libraries utilized technology to help at the reference desk besides just having your online catalog? Is there a way that technology because it sounds like you have a limited amount of hours for staff, is there additional tech that can help with reference, or is one-on-one the best way that you have found? Or other
I believe it's
have
usually best in terms of, using technology to answer questions. Academic libraries, mostly it's academic, not so much public. A few have dabbled in chat reference, but that's usually subcontracted out to a separate company that provides. And then the local element and knowing anything about local collections is lost. I know Minnesota had a statewide contract for a while. I don't know if they've still continued that. We talk about drop-in technology assistance, and one of the things, it's one of the things we're first looking at. Should we, whatever point in time, have additional staff where, again, these are the hours, somebody's going to be here to help you with your device and your technology question, and that it's posted and predictable.
Do you have any language barriers? Clients that are coming in that, they're trying to figure out, you mentioned the immigration, form.
There are.
And so you guys have, as part of your staff, people who have language abilities that
We don't have multilingual staff currently, other than, some Western European languages, but we don't have Arabic well, maybe one of the pages, but not in terms of the information staff, like Arabic or Somali language speakers. It is a need. There are contract services, there are phone services like healthcare uses, that should we really, really struggle, that we could make use of. We have done some basic brochures in translation over time. It is, at this point, many of the communities are strong enough where there's somebody who's been here 3-5 years who acts as the liaison and introduces the newcomers too. And some of the other agencies or groups that we have actively partnered with, like the Welcome Week folks and the We Center, the Wellness and
Empowerment. We work with
Empowerment.
Rotary in terms of Project English that's been going on. That's grown that's been what, 7 years?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
questions from folks. Carlos is leaning in, but
Well, I was interested in you talked about the networks, and I was wondering how formalized this is. You talked about webinars and keeping up to date on what other libraries are doing. Do you go to formal, I don't know, workshops or seminars or conferences yearly or twice yearly or something like that?
Not twice yearly, but we are active, and a lot of our staff are active in the North Dakota Library Association, where we are not only sharing what we know, but also learning from our colleagues. It is a whole lot more accessible with web delivery now for training. It's a whole lot more than there was available. Before that, it was like only NDLA once a year or Public Library Association every other year. We still do those. It's a both and. We participate with things with the Tri-College or the university libraries host, where there is a mailing list, and if they're bringing in a speaker and inviting the local library community, we definitely have people there as well. And that's not just the reference department, that's library-wide.
More questions?
I was just excited to have Beth come and talk because I didn't really know what a reference librarian did. Maybe people around my age don't really know what reference does. Do you find that a lot? Like people?
Oh yeah, it is an old term, and it meant to refer to another source. I mean, we were always in the constant business of referring. And what's labeled over our desk is now information. We're about connecting people with information. So yeah, because the reference term isn't always that helpful, actually. Yeah.
Was it like a separate degree? Like, is it like like a major within libraries?
You can pick concentrations.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes, because actually Sarah Westall held up her curriculum from Kent State, and they have what they call as 12 pathways. And I'm sure Sonny, who recently completed his, could attest to some. There are more that are systems related, more that are technical services related, more that are youth and children related. I don't even know what some of the new stuff is. So, yeah. Yes.
Special collections.
It's some of the big data in terms of how data is used branches over into library and information science as well.
How do people know what services you provide? As far as, do you connect with local genealogy clubs or ones that are interested in history, or how do you get out like the information that you do know to connect to people?
We have strong ties, I would say more because it's more downtown related and years of continuity. We have fairly strong ties with, anything Minnesota, we will refer over to Clay County Historical Society and Mark Peel. But Mark is in using our collections too, and he's a speaker for us, and it's a long-term relationship. We had a booth at last year's Family History Workshop, which is always hosted annually every September by the Red River Valley Genealogy Society. So we put ourselves out there for that. We will be having a series of programs, actually, because some of what we know we share as informational programs. So Foundation Center classes, and the Genealogy Ancestry is coming up in January.
Another question, if it's allowed. So as far as you said that you try to help patrons find resources that are reliable, have you connected, I don't know if schools, like elementary schools, also offer a similar teaching to younger students about finding information that is reliable and more accurate? Is that a service you provide to elementary schools, or have people approached you about that?
We don't do teacher training,
Okay.
but that is something that is pretty well in all the current MLS curriculum, and certainly I don't participate in myself because I don't need the certification, but Valley City State has the certification program for school media specialists. It's the one that most of the state school media folks go through. And there are always continuing education classes every single summer for credits. And they also do units for credit as part of NDLA. And definitely spotting fake news, information literacy for kids has been a constant part of the training of the school media specialists.
I'll ask one more just really specific question. So recently some nonfiction moved in the main library.
Correct.
And in the new section. How has that been going? And do you decide where like new information is coming, or do you have a team that decides where new information goes? And
A lot of that work has been done by both people involved in collections and circulation, So Jason and Cheryl, Jason DeShaw, head of collection, Cheryl Lackman, head of circulation, people who are interested in circulation turnover rates. In terms of merchandising the collection, we're heavily involved in that move. Reference staff, it's more so we get the question, where'd they go? And it's like, okay, let me walk you over, show you how much more is on display. And it's like, oh, this is cool.
Good. Yeah. I like it too. Thank you.
Wow. Any more questions?
So you do not want customers or patrons saying, I don't need a lawyer, I've got a research librarian.
I don't. We don't want to
frequently-
be called to the stand.
Right, right. We have pamphlets for legal aid. We know the places to refer people to. It's sort of like, here are the self-help legal books, but if you get in too far, you probably want to contact a lawyer, is a statement I've made.
And I have an aside to that. My first job was as a reference librarian in a library, and it was around tax time, so there's all the tax forms. This back was paper heavy, paper. And the woman comes up to the desk, and she spends about 7 minutes looking at all these various piles of all these different forms and pamphlets and whatnot. And she looks to me and says, do you know which tax forms I need? And I said, ma'am, I don't, because I have no idea in regards to your financial situation, she says. And she turned around to me in utter disgust and said, you are the reference librarian, aren't you?
Yes,
So-
but not your biography.
So that's an example of what you run into.
Thank you.
Yeah, more questions for Beth, or have we grilled her enough? Okay. Well, thank you, Beth. This was very helpful, very
Happy to share.
informative. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the action item under the new business would be the Board Orientation Ad Hoc Committee. So do you want me to chat about that?
Take it away.
I'll take it away. Okay, so it's a project that seems like it could take a bird's eye view at what the board does, our role, what's not our role, what we should know, a refresher on what we should know, maybe new information on what we should know, different ways that we can be involved. I just think it's a great way to kind of re-look at how we bring people on and what the expectations are of the people that are on. And actually, I don't want to take the credit here. I thought this was a great idea by Whitney. She's the newest board member, and she's a curious individual, and curiosity is great. I think it pushes folks to ask questions and think about things differently. And so it's been a great addition, and I think it's a great idea to check in and see what are we doing, what can we be doing better, and what are we doing great. So all of it, just looking at all of it. So the idea then is to form a committee that takes a look at what members should know and talks through that, compiles all the information, works with Tim to this isn't in a vacuum. This is in collaboration with the library. And eventually culminating in a presentation to the board and our listeners at home and whoever would like to come for that meeting. And just be, just kind of a revamp of who we are, what we do, and how we can do better. So that's the idea behind the Board Orientation Ad Hoc Committee. I certainly, if Tim or Whitney, if there's anything that, if you feel like there's other stuff to add to it.
The only thing I would say is if you decide in terms of the makeup of the committee, if you go to 4 members, then that constitutes a quorum, and then it becomes, then it becomes a formal meeting that gets out to the public and this kind of thing, but that's up to you. That's just kind of however you want to do it.
That's good to know. That's helpful. You don't count as,
I don't
obviously
count
in that
I
quorum.
don't count
Okay.
as much.
Okay, Whitney, did you have anything to add to that? Just making sure. Do you have anything to add to the this idea and concept and to put you on the spot?
I just really like to research, and so when I came on the board, I was like, oh, what should I know about being on a library board? And then I found a couple examples of orientation packets from other jurisdictions that they have for their library boards, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting information to know. What would we want to have here? And so I just started asking the questions.
Yeah, here we are.
That led to today.
Yeah.
So here we are.
So great, and I do want the folks to know at home that we do get information given to us too. But these terms are for 3 years, and they can be back to back for a total of 6 years. So I think it's always a great thing to refresh first. Yeah. So
Or to come in,
knowing,
hit the ground running.
exactly. So I don't see any downsides of it. So let's do it. So it is a board orientation ad hoc committee. It is an action item. I'm gonna caution people, we don't want to get to the 4. So maybe,
I mean, it's okay to have 4.
oh, it is.
I mean, it's just
a
that
different dynamic.
we'll work with the city in terms of scheduling, and
Then we need to sit here
Meetings.
and
I'm not completely sure
Okay.
if that's the deal, but one way or another, it needs to be advertised and posted that
That it's,
open meeting
Minutes.
transpired on this day at this time.
You should know,
I
as a
would-
fellow attorney, that when you don't follow the open meetings rules, the Attorney General will write a special opinion about what you did wrong.
well, see, and this is all stuff that we're gonna learn.
We don't want any
about-
special opinions,
We don't want any special opinions.
just regular opinions.
Yeah, but this kind of stuff too, even this
Or no
conversation, I think
opinions.
is further exemplifies why something like this would be helpful. So, okay, so enough talking. Let's open this up to potential folks who want to be part of this committee. Go.
I want to be part of this committee.
You want to be part of this committee? Okay. Anyone else?
how often would it meet, and how many months would it take?
Yes, great question.
to us
It's
for us
ad
to
hoc.
figure it out?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Approximately.
Okay, I have a couple
and
other.
another question. Go ahead.
Now, the goal to this committee, besides looking into these things that we'd like to know, is to prepare a, pamphlet, an introduction?
I would say to identify specific orientation packet items.
Put together
An orientation pack.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then bring that to the board for review.
Yep.
Very specific.
All right, if we put together a board committee, or ad hoc committee to look into this, do we have, I know we have the library available to us, do we have some of the expertise, for instance, to design this?
I would say
This
that
handout.
there are so many examples of that available on the internet, and I know Jan has worked on quite a number of various boards and committees
Yep.
in her experience, and I think her experience and background would be invaluable to
Yep.
this discussion.
Yep.
To get to Carlos's question.
Yep.
She would be the closest in-house resource that would be really
what I was asking, but I
beneficial
wasn't gonna
to
use
this
paint.
discussion.
Yes, agreed, given Jan's background. So, if she doesn't, she's not here. But if she, I don't know if I can do this, Betsy, you can, but I would like to ask at large if Jan would, I know she's not here, but just kind of, am I allowed to do that? Have her be, part of this,
Liaison?
somebody who's involved in this? Is that something you're shaking your head, yes? Oh, okay. Okay, so then Jan's added. So she's watching from home. Congratulations. Okay, that,
Happens when you don't show up to a meeting.
exactly, you get volunteered for stuff. So, and then we go, okay, so let's do that. So,
Move to establish an ad hoc committee for the board orientation.
I'll second that motion.
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? No, okay, so we have established it. We never circled back to Whitney about time constraints and what this would be in, then level of involvement. So, I'd like to roll this out within the next few months. I don't think it should be something that should drag on forever and ever. But, it's moving, it depends on who's on the committee and what, I guess, the folks' availability would be. And since we're partnering with library staff to get input and feedback and all that kind of stuff, it makes sense if it would be during your guys' hours.
I'm flexible.
And Tim's flexible, that's great. So I don't have a definite answer for you.
I would be willing to be on it, but if we only want 3, I'm willing to not be on it.
Well,
Whatever.
yeah, well, and that's the thing. Do we have to have a final number of appointed at this point, or can we just say the committee's been established? We have,
Could be a revolving door.
could be a revolving door, where does everybody have to show up at every meeting? Can we be?
I think with ad hoc, it's not, I mean, certainly, I don't remember reading anything in the bylaws that is very so specific. When you create the ad hoc, they all have to show up at this time, and there's gotta be this amount, and
Okay.
they have to be there at every one. It's ad hoc, so it's kind of, if Whitney can be there, I think we wanna get an identified number, because we don't wanna be murky in terms of open meeting situations.
Sure.
So I think that's important, but who shows up when to what meeting and how many, I don't think that's,
Okay, but
That's
so
specific.
for the purpose of the open meeting, let's say there's 4, that magic number, 4 people that are on, but not 4 show up to every meeting. Does that trigger those laws in some way, where then now it's not
I
an
think
open
if
meeting?
we've identified that there are 4 members of this particular ad hoc committee, that there's always a potential, see what they do is, like, if there's a meeting and commissioners are invited, and then they have a blurb that there's a potential of a quorum if X amount of commissioners show up, we would have to have that up front and out before the meeting, saying, we're having a meeting of this ad hoc committee related to library board orientation packet development. There's potential for a quorum of board
One
members.
come all, really.
Yes,
Line up, we'll put, line up outside the meeting.
it is what it is.
It could be. Well, okay,
Don't
well.
look at me.
Yeah, the potential is there. So I'll self-identify as well. It seems though that we'll have to work out the details. We've got 3 so far. I've identified Jan. Hope, we'll see if she's a willing recipient of that. I don't want it also to be pressure. I'm playing this on, so
No,
don't worry
that's
about it,
good.
because it will eventually make it
We've
back.
got 3.
Yes. Yeah.
Much as I'd
I
love
don't
to hang
need to
out
be
with
on it
you all.
either. If
Well,
you'd like to bow out, depending on who feels passionately, we can discuss that later.
Okay. Well, and Jan's a wild card, because like I said, she's not here, and I pointed her via default. But, so for right now, there are 4. Everybody's eventually gonna hear it, and we'll see if that number goes down to be continued, I guess. Is that okay? Are we able to leave the meeting that way? Okay. Getting a nod for viewers at home, we're getting a nod from Betsy.
Given the personnel involved in this.
And we'll
committee,
verify
we need to come up with a retainer.
as a city department.
Yeah, it's gonna be very expensive.
Oh, you
Yeah,
paid to win.
you can't afford it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, very good.
Tim, what was your point? What was
No,
your-
and we'll follow up, the city attorney, make sure we dot the
doing
i's and cross the
everything.
t's in
Yeah.
regards to this.
Yeah, and maybe even they have materials to give us for the orientation packet. I mean, this could be full circle here, where they, they're
First things
involved
first.
anyway.
We'll work.
Yeah, first things first. Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited about that. That's been approved. We're moving on. We're going long on the meetings here. So, Tim, we are on to the statistical reports.
Yeah, you look at the library use 2019, you can see in last November, our attendance was up a little bit over November of 18, kind of coming around the curve of the disruption of Sodbuster. Year-to-date, though, down 4% over last year. Program attendance is strong, remains strong. See that. Volunteer hours down there. Now, the big difference there, you see Carlson had 38 this past November, and then November of 2018, they had 327. I followed up with Lori in regards to that, and I guess what the numbers that are missing from November of 2019 is we have these volunteer yoga classes down there. And they had them this past November, but the folks that were volunteering never got Lori the number of hours that they were doing them.
Oh.
And so we didn't want to just ad lib a bunch of numbers and put it in there. So it should be higher. We haven't, and I guess Lori's been talking to them a bunch of times. So the variance there is based on yoga numbers that took place that weren't counted, essentially. Internet sign up, down a little over last year. Electronic activity in terms of web page hits, strong compared to last year. Circulation, happy to see print looking strong. And overall, up 2% year-to-date over last year. And again, for this past November, the 82,213, that's a record for the month of November. So we bumped back up after kind of folks wondering, where's the parking? What are we doing? So we're on pace through December. If we keep going the way we're going, it'll be the highest level of circulation. Another record year for us in that regard. So that is usage. If anybody has questions in regards to usage.
Usage questions from anyone? No, but a tip of our hat about breaking the record, so that's
We're
great.
there, we're almost there.
We're almost there. I
Yeah.
won't count it too soon, but, okay, so then let's move on to finances.
Right, looking at donation, the $25, we got, a group got a tour of Carlson and was kind enough to give us $25. I'm not entirely sure which group that was. On the expense side, $1,000, you can see, and that was from an anonymous gift for Northport to help pay for the new blinds up at Northport. $323, both from the Friends, and on the expense side, over $300 for Craft or Noons, and the $15 there was for the seed library that will take place in the spring. The $24, that was for the purchase of book from another donation for Northport. And the $113, about 83 of that was for the staff training admin team retreat. Again, that's Friends money. And also $30 of that goes for the Way to Go for staff recognition. Again, that is also Friends donation. So thank you, Friends.
Friends, any questions for Tim on the financials? Well, we just made it through donations.
Oh, yeah, we just, year-to-date, through 92% of the year, we're a little over 87% expended. Obviously, we've identified other things that we've taken care of through budget, so we're looking good there. Revenue, just under 52,000 year-to-date through the end of November.
Questions for Tim? No. Thank you for those reports. The next part is the Friends of the Library report, and we do not have one of them, but we want to thank them for always helping us out, because they do that every month. So we appreciate that. So thank you, Friends. Public comment.
Since we're running late, why don't we skip the public comment?
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be overwhelming today, actually. So I think that, sorry guys, sorry, all of the, no, so we're joking. The people can't see it. There's no public.
Careful.
Yeah, there's no public there today. There's just Betsy that's remaining. So, so no public comment today. That means our next regular meeting is January 21st, and this meeting is adjourned.